Hey everyone, my name is Jessica with fulfilledandabundant.com, and today I get the incredible pleasure of interviewing Angelica. Angelica is a gut health coach, and she specializes in healing women with gut health issues and fatigue. How are you, Angelica?
I'm feeling pretty good this week. I've been a little bit tired, but like in general, I'm really just grateful to be here. And I'm so excited to get to connect with your community and you because you're one of my dearest friends. And this is just going to be fun play today.
Yeah, I love that. We're bringing value to everyone, and Angelica is one of my very close friends. We actually first connected because of gut health. So I have very openly talked about my gut health journey and the gut health issues and how horrible it can be. And Angelica was very open about being a gut health coach and her journey. And so naturally we had a ton to talk about. So how did you first start? What attracted you to becoming a gut health coach?
Yeah, so what initially drew me to study gut health and really look at the body a different way. It was like looking at the functionality of the body versus the traditional Western medicine approach, which was like just looking at blood tests and going to a primary care physician and being told you're fine. So what led me to discover gut health was just my own pain, my own challenges with it. And it was like in my late 20s, it really started to come into focus. I mean, I've always had like minor issues throughout my life, some bloating, some just distress, heartburn and such growing up. But then when I started to get systemic issues like fatigue, adult onset acne, brain fog, that's when I started to go, okay, like I really need to concentrate on this and fix what's going on in my gut, which is where immunity and nutrients are going on and happening. I'm like, okay, let's focus on this. Let's try to get this right.
Yeah. So, okay, you said all the like minor things that were always existing. Can we actually go into that? Because my whole life had these minor things as well. And we all just think it's normal and that's just my genetics and that's just how I am. And that's not true.
Yeah, you're so right. Like, I would say it's common nowadays for a lot of us to be living with some form of digestive distress, whether it's like bloating, gas, either burping or farting, irregular bowel movements, whether it's too much or it's too few, or it's like you go, but it doesn't feel like it's enough. So yeah, it's like I think we've all gotten used to that. Heartburn, perfect example. We have so many pharmaceuticals to give us a little bit of a band-aid to bring us some symptomatic relief that yeah, a lot of people now are just living with these issues. When they go unaddressed for a long time, like in my case, they can start to manifest as like systemic, more serious issues that really get in the way of you living a good and abundant life.
Mm. Yeah. So if anybody has anything that's a little bit off, that's something to look deeper into. So the things that I had from being a really little kid, I always had these bumps that were just like dry skin on the back of my arm. And they only went away when I quit eating sugar in my 30s. So I had these weird bumps. I always had bad skin. I always had bowel issues as a child, which that's not normal. I always had sleep issues as a child. So all of these things are not normal and they all indicate gut health issues. Is that right?
They can, absolutely. Like clearly like skin issues, sleep problems, like that little thing you got in the back of your arm could have been like a dry skin or a little bit of an immune reaction, like a rosacea. those could all be attributed to different imbalances in the body. But yeah, like the gut is such a great place to work from, because a lot of those things that stem from like nutrient imbalances, from immune system being triggered and activated and excited, that can be addressed by addressing gut health. So yeah, like obviously a lot of these general symptoms can be attributed to different things, but I think gut health covers so many bases that it's such a logical place to begin. And in my case, and in your case as well, like the gut really was the vulnerable area that needed the most prioritization to start to move the needle on the symptoms.
Yeah, it was a very pivotal thing for me to figure out. And what led me to figure it out is my doctor told me, oh, well, you're just getting older.
So how did that make you feel? Like, what did that activate in you?
Well, so fundamentally, I believe that everything is curable and healable, everything. And I know that that kind of blanket statement can be triggering to people. And I have a lot of compassion for you if you're going through something serious, but I've just always had that belief. And I was raised in a family that cured all these incurable diseases. So that was normal for me. So when she said that, that plunged me into research. And I already had a passion for health to begin with. So I already had like a good understanding. I had heard about Anthony Williams, and I just started looking. I think it was symptoms. I was complaining to my doctor about being tired, and not just sleepy. It was intense. And then so I started researching tired legs and fatigue, and that led me to gut health, and then that led me to lectin-free diet, that led me to eating keto, that led me to like all of these different things, and I tried everything. And I made a good, I am proud of myself.
Yeah, see, like I love what stood out to me was that you expected to be curable. And that's so important first, that we get in that mindset before we do any kind of work on the physical level. Let's expect to overcome these things, and let's expect that it's our birthright to feel optimal and feel vital, and to wake up every day with a body that is capable of meeting us in terms of our spiritual and soul purpose for the day, you know? And so that really stood out to me that you said that. And that's such an important mindset to have in order to go into this world. We're just talking about these, I wouldn't call them alternative medicine. I would call it just a new paradigm of medicine and healthcare that has not yet been thoroughly fleshed out and shared with the lay public. It's still a little bit fringy. It's still a little bit cutting edge. And yeah, so I just love that mindset that you were lucky to have been raised with, because you had a family that comes from a medical background, and they shared that same perspective as well, that it's our birthright and our natural state to be imbalanced and for everything to flow easily.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to ask this question to Angelica, but I want all of you listening to define this for yourself. What is your definition of vitality? For yourself and for others?
Oh my gosh, I love this question, because it really like pushes my comfort zone, right? It's like to think and dream big, not in that like small story of like, you know, oh, we're getting older or the body deteriorates or like none of that, you know. So I really love that question. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm gonna let this be spontaneous. My idea of vitality is to wake up every day in full faith that my body is going to meet my soul where it wants to go that day. Meaning everyone has a purpose. We all stepped into this body with a soul purpose, a mission to fulfill. Yeah. And so to wake up every day, full confidence, knowing that my body is like in alignment and in agreement with what my soul needs to do
Oh,
that day.
I didn't expect that. I love that. I love that. That's so exciting. Like, could you imagine what the world would be like if everybody was in that kind of soul alignment? Everybody would love their jobs. So because of that, you would expect and receive amazing quality products, services, experience. Oh my God.
That lights you up. You up, yeah.
I love that. Okay, so everybody listening, please reach for your highest vitality to make the world a better place.
Yeah, and it's going to take some conditioning of this practice of asking every day, what is my highest? What is my highest that I could reach for today? That I want to. How do I want to show up and serve the planet today? And it can be hard when you're stuck in the story of the body being in pain or in being in debility, fear. Sometimes it can be challenging to wake up every day and wonder, what is my highest I could reach for today? But I promise, just try a little bit every single morning. Start writing as first thing when you wake up. Start writing or reflecting inwardly about like what you really want to do and what's your highest desire today, and just practice. And every day you're going to stretch that muscle and work it a little bit more, and it's going to get stronger.
That's a fantastic exercise to start the day off with, writing.
Yeah, before all the stuff comes into my brain, and it's so easy. Like I catch myself, I don't know what your morning routine is like. I know you and I have talked about keeping our minds really clear and how that's like a focus of ours. And I notice in the morning, it's so easy for me once I turn off my alarm clock. Most mornings, I still need to use it to like have a thought or have something I want to look at, like explore on my phone, and to just go down that rabbit hole versus waking up and fully noticing and sort of bathing in what's here. What did I wake up with? What did I dream about? What kind of energy am I bringing into the day? How do I really want to feel today? So constantly I'm like working with myself on cultivating that. And that's how I am able to ask my soul, what do you want to bring in today?
How powerful. I love that. So, okay, you said something about optimal nutrients with the gut health. So are you saying that if your gut health is not totally in balance, your body doesn't have the ability to take the food and make it into the nutrients that you need?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a big piece of it. So I want to, for your audience, I'm going to give a few little pearls right now.
Yeah.
A little bit of teaching. So yes, the gut is responsible. And when I say gut, I say everything from mouth to exit, right? It's responsible for breaking down our food into its littlest components. Like think about stripping the beads off of a necklace. And then in our intestine, we get to absorb those little individual feeds, which then go to little areas in our body to start reconstructing our body and fulfilling its needs to do all of its functions. So that's like what we're here to do. That is what our gut is designed to do for us. And what can go wrong are, your organs may not be secreting the right juices in order for you to chemically break down and strip off the beads on the necklace so that you can absorb the beads. So that's one thing that can go out of balance. The other thing that can go out of balance is the exposure to the toxins that are rampant around us. Plastics, pesticides, additives in food. All of these things can essentially create an inflammatory process in our intestines, exactly where we're supposed to be sucking up nutrients, and just start functioning highly. And these toxins can really disrupt and dysregulate that assimilation. So that's another big factor. And then another big one I have to mention here are imbalances of organisms and infections anywhere in the GI tract. These days, because of the water we're drinking, because of, I would say, our toxic exposure over time, we are now more susceptible to infections of opportunistic organisms, or something like mold, which is a whole other separate category, but I'm just going to lump it in. Essentially, our toxic overload is like making it so that it's so common now to have these imbalance of organisms or like a mold infection in the body.
Okay. And so because of the fundamental imbalance, then the body's not able to address these other things that result in the problems that we're going to the doctor for.
Absolutely. Yes. These are, the things I've just named that can go wrong in our digestion and our digestive system. Those are like some of the main root causes that I see in my clinical practice, in my coaching practice. These are the roots that like are really causing the digestion problems. Often if you go to a primary care doctor, someone in your health insurance network, and you say, I have, diarrhea and bloating, like they're going to probably give you some kind of symptom suppressing pharmaceutical or over-the-counter option to sort of alleviate your diarrhea or to try to give you some relief from gas or bloating, versus looking at, well, why is the dysfunction going awry? What are the underlying factors? So what I just named is, I hope, just giving you whetting your appetite, giving you some ideas of what can be at the root of your digestive distress.
Wow, so powerful. Okay, so I wrote a few questions down, and you're inspiring me to want to look at the first question. So someone that has absolutely never heard of gut health issues, or I wrote it out. Okay, I'm just going to read it. So how would someone that has never heard of gut issues recognize that it is the problem or a contributing factor? So what are like a few things for someone to recognize that they should look at gut health when they've never heard of this before?
Okay, gotcha. Right. So how do they know that their fatigue or their brain fog can be related to a gut dysfunction? Okay, so that's a great question. And it's a toughie because sometimes the imbalance in the gut that's driving fatigue and brain fog and other systemic issues throughout the body, like sometimes it can be totally masked or totally like undercover because you don't have gut symptoms. So there are quite a number of people. For example, let's take a sensitivity to wheat or gluten that happens mainly in your intestines. That's where the inflammation begins. That's where that sensitivity, that immune response begins. Like 8 out of 10 people who have a gluten or celiac or wheat issue, they don't even have gut symptoms. So it can totally go undetected for years that you have this chronic inflammatory process going on, exposing yourself to gluten or wheat, and you don't even know because you don't have a gut symptom. And we all have this assumption that it's going to manifest as bloating or gas or something obvious, okay? But for most people, it can actually show up as brain, like antibodies to the brain. So seeing memory issues, balance issues. It can manifest as eczema, skin issues. So it's very, very interesting, that little undercover kind of gut root cause that goes undetected. So that's a long-winded way of saying, if you don't have gut symptoms already, there are functional tests that you can take to examine and investigate if you are having an imbalance in your gut that is probably likely contributing to your main symptoms.
Powerful. Thank you. And most likely, almost everyone, unfortunately, does have some kind of gut issues because our world is so toxic.
A lot of us, and genetically, we are all so different. Like you and I, we are so sensitive, right? We are sensitive beings in so many ways. And so I think that's why we are so fastidious about diet and about what we allow into our mouths, into our bodies, because we know that physically we are so sensitive and our body is going to tell us right away when it's stressed out. Exactly. So some people are probably going to be like not feeling things again, not feeling symptomatic, or not even have like very significant health issues where they're going to address the gut dysfunction. But yeah, like I agree with you that like the fact that we are exposed to the things we are in our municipal water, the fact that we're breathing in so many toxins that were formerly never a factor in human existence. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that we all need to like just be extra aware that we support our digestion for life.
Yeah. Very powerful. Thank you. And okay, here's another question. What are some blocks for standard healthcare? What are some blocks to standard healthcare resolving your gut issues? So you believe you have gut issues, you go to your doctor because the established relationship is important. And what are some common blocks that will prevent you from even recognizing it?
Well, let's just be frank here. Like oftentimes it's the practitioner themselves that like may not be able to create a how do I put this? A dialogue, a meaningful dialogue with you as their patient, where they are open to receiving your thoughts and ideas and concerns, and they're willing to respond to them or to provide treatment options or testing options that will help you feel like as the patient you're being taken care of. A good example is like sometimes you're like, I'm really curious. I've heard that vitamin D is so important for my immune function and so many functions of my body. Would you test my vitamin D this month? And frankly, I've had a doctor do this to me where it's like, well, your vitamin D last year was in the normal range. So no, like we don't usually do that. Like, I'm not going to do that for you. You see? So it's just like a little thing where like, you know, your doctor, it's really great to work with a doctor who's like open-minded, receptive, and wants to meet your needs. You know, obviously they're the professionals. They went to medical school. That wasn't easy. They've got clinical experience, but I think it's so important to have a doctor that is like, can meet you where you're at. And I know that's been an important one for you, Jessica.
Yeah, it is powerful. Okay, so feeling truly heard and received.
Yeah.
By the person that you're consulting.
Yes. And sorry. I was just so excited about the one more piece that I think is so important, and that they fully like hear, you know, what you're going through, and they don't try to tell you that you're not going through it. Meaning like, I feel so much anxiety at night and I can't go to sleep, and I think it's the food I'm eating. Like, for the doctor to then respond, they can go, oh, okay, you're experiencing that. Like, I can see that that's really challenging for you, versus a doctor, it's like, well, no, it can't be what you eat. Like, they kind of just dismiss it or poo-poo it. Like, I know better. You know, it's like, okay, great. Like, you don't need to agree with me and all the things that I think might be going on, but you do need to validate where I am. So important.
Thank you. I think that gives all of us confidence to stand our ground and not give up on ourselves, because we're talking to someone that has maybe 20 or 30 years of experience with millions of people, and all we know is our own experience.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that. And your experience, your body is ground zero. It is the most important one in your life. So that doctor can be coming from years of clinical practice. Maybe if they're great, they're really like staying on top of the medical research, but still, like, you could come in and you could present differently. Like, you could be a new puzzle that they have not seen yet. So don't ever like discredit yourself and your experience. Even if your doctor is trying to dismiss it or convince you that the studies show this or that their experience says this, don't ever dismiss or discredit what you're going through.
Powerful. So, okay, I've heard of this before, but can you tell us what the brain gut bridge is? I've heard of it, but there's no way I could tell other people, and I know it's important. So
yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, there's actually so much we don't even know. Like, we don't even know what we don't know about this connection between these two separate organ systems. So I'm going to try to just explain simply anatomically what that connection looks like. And then I'm going to discuss like how that connection manifests in our day-to-day life. So when we are actually embryos, we were just a kind of a clump of cells, right? And then they differentiate, they start forming these complex systems that eventually becomes our little amazing body. And the gut and the brain, they happen to emerge from the same cluster of cells. So very interesting. They're almost like twins in a way when you're in the embryonic form, and then in the body further develops, and then they separate into their own organ systems, but they're still connected. So there is a nerve from brain to gut called the vagus nerve. So I would call that like the anatomical connection. Okay. But there's more, because there's a complex like hormone signaling and neurotransmitters that like travel between the brain and the gut that like basically they like feed each other. It's a bi-directional communication. So one example of this is like a lot of our serotonin, which is our feel-good hormone. It's like something that you could imagine is released when you eat like some carbohydrates and you feel like that that yummy, like happy, like calm feeling. That's serotonin. And like majority of that is produced in our intestines. So isn't that interesting that like we thought of that as like a brain chemical, you know, a mood chemical. We always are thinking mood up in the brain, but actually so much of it is produced in our gut. So how interesting, right? So that's one example. Another example is I really want to talk about mental health, because it is such a big passion of mine. It's how I see my work with like healing the gut naturally, really healing women on a deeper level of anxiety, depression that are so rampant nowadays in our society. So many of us are on mood balancing drugs, and we have this increasing sense of loneliness and loss of connection. So how the gut and the brain interact when it comes to mood stuff is if you have an inflammatory process happening in your gut, those inflammatory molecules, they don't just stay in your gut. It's not like you create a localized fire and then it gets put out and you're okay. No, actually inflammation that begins in our gut, like we talked about with wheat and gluten, for example, if someone's sensitive, it does not stay in the gut. It can actually travel through our blood to other areas of your body. And so for some people like myself, my mental health has been a big vulnerability for me. It's genetically a huge vulnerability in my family. So when I'm having inflammatory issues, I will experience depression. I will experience anxiety. So that's another example of how this gut-brain connection can show up.
That's so interesting.
It's again, this is very like cutting edge and exploratory discussion. Not a lot of medical research or medical establishments are looking at this piece yet. Well, I shouldn't say there isn't research. There is research that's looking at this piece, but the medical establishment typically takes a couple of decades to catch up with the research. Hence that disconnect between a patient who comes in and is really curious and like has a lot to share and ask their doctor about, and the doctor just poo-poos it and dismisses it. That's why that disconnect can occur.
Because it hasn't become, the research hasn't filtered its way into the mainstream yet.
Exactly. And it's so good to like, I think evidence-based medicine is amazing. It's good to rest on reliable research. It's really good to do that. But also like if you're coming in with a really complex case as a patient, you've tried a bunch of treatments and nothing's budging, like, well, then like the cost of you not looking at the cutting edge research could be very, very steep. You see what I'm saying? So it's like when you got like nothing to lose in a way, you got nothing to lose.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah. I often preach organic food only to very many people, and the pushback that I get every time from that. And I'm just saying how powerful only eating organic is. And people will respond and say, oh, but it's so expensive. And I say, yeah, but serious health problems are expensive too. So
yeah. Yes, and they're more expensive the older you get and the longer the dysfunction is able to keep going in your body and keep slowly, insidiously, damaging and breaking down your body. So I agree with you 100%. Organic food. And hey, if you can't afford organic food, like I get it, then unfortunately our food system has not been set up yet where we can all have access to safe and healthy food. But if that's a topic for you, that's a money conversation, affordability, at least get some baking soda and vinegar and create a bath and wash all of your produce really, really well in that bath. You can just let it sit for like 10 minutes and bam, like you'll remove a lot of the pesticides that way.
I've never heard of that. So is it specific proportions or just some baking soda and some vinegar?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have the proportion off the top of my head, but but I have tried it in the past where I've had like, let's say, a couple of gallons of water in a bowl so I could submerge like a ton of vegetables. Usually it helps to do it all at once, rather than every time you cook. And I will just like probably do like a quarter cup of vinegar in there and just like that'll be enough. Or I might do like a couple tablespoons of baking soda and maybe you need even less. I don't know, but those are such affordable household products to have on hand. So I just think that's a really great and accessible way to start like cleaning your food.
Yeah. Okay, so a huge bowl of water and a quarter cup of vinegar and 2 teaspoons of table salt.
Baking soda and
baking soda.
Yeah, I don't think you have to have both. But yeah, so either or. I like the baking soda personally.
Okay, and that removes any pesticides that are on the surface of the food.
That's what my sources say, that it can remove like majority, like really drastically reduce that load. And if like that's the best you can do right now, that's the best you can do. We all just have to do our best.
And I am very proud of how cheaply I can cook for the health value. So you can, with Angelica or I, to map out a way to make organic food affordable because it is 100% doable. And in the end, you will save money. Like in 1 year,
Absolutely. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Like I'm guessing a lot of your audience is like probably not, they're probably have pretty good eating habits, right? But also being honest with yourself is like, are you like wasting money on eating out? Here in California, where we're both from, like you can't really eat out for less than like $15 or $20 per person. That's like on a good day. And so like if you're doing that more often than you should, or maybe like buying expensive coffee more often than you should, like that's all coming away from your grocery budget. And what we want to be doing is our main fuel is going to be our home prepared, organically sourced food.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. So we already touched on emotions and how gut health affects our emotional state. So let's go a little deeper into that. What is emotional healing versus gut healing?
Oh, great question. Okay. Whew.
I know they relate, but you said that.
So the reason that emotional healing, I'm going to talk about how emotional healing came up in my health journey, and then we'll go from there. So when I first started to try to get help on the obvious gut and digestion issues happening and the systemic issues like the fatigue and the acne, at the same time, I was experiencing these horrible mood imbalances, horrible anxiety, like intense fear, intense dread, and just sadness. So I sought out the help of an energy healer, sort of like a therapist, but who was also incorporating energy techniques rather than like traditional psychotherapy and psychology. I did that because I just needed to be able to manage my mind. And my emotions. I want to explain how there's like your physiology can really trigger and activate your emotions. So like our brain chemistry, inflammation in the brain, an imbalance of brain chemicals, that can all lead to the mind going places, and wherever the mind goes, our emotions go. So that can happen. So there's like a physiological trigger, but I also think that like that kind of is a calling, or it's an opportunity, and it was an opportunity for me to address, like, what are these patterns of anxiety and fear that I established in my life? And I was able to fully like start to take ownership and responsibility for them. Wow. Oh, I grew up like, really stressing out about pleasing my parents. And so that is now causing me to have these compulsive behaviors that aren't serving my highest good. They're just trying to keep me in that, they're trying to help me survive and to please my parents. So that's an example of like how I was able to start like address the emotional healing piece so that I could allow my body to relax more, and that I could do the physiological healing. Because it's like, if your body is always tight and contracted in trauma or repetitive thoughts and behaviors that don't feel good, it's really difficult for the body to heal just on the physical level.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of talks and studies that have shown that stress is one of the most toxic things for our human body. And
Absolutely.
I think it's so difficult to pinpoint sometimes. There's, when you're used to operating at a certain level, you just think it's normal. So like, what? I'm not stressed out. But then when you actually do come down and really relax, you're like, oh my God, I haven't felt like this in years or ever. It's when you're used to a certain level, it's very hard to recognize. So you might be in the middle of it and like, what? I'm not stressed out. Everything's good. But no, you're on high drive and you're doing damage, even though it looks like you're succeeding.
Oh my gosh. Oh, girl, I'm so glad you brought that up. I love how you're like really just gently guiding this conversation into all the places, like the good corners maybe it needs to go. Yes, like as women especially, we have been conditioned to disconnect from the body. And the body is the clue, that's the trail of breadcrumbs to the trauma and the patterns that are keeping our nervous system locked in these patterns that don't serve us and don't help us wake up in the morning and go, okay, soul, what's the highest like you want me to live into today? And so really like being able to feel into the body, and it's so helpful to have great sisters and friends in your life and trained healers and practitioners that can help you and drop back into your body and notice what's there. And then we can start to, repattern and regulate that system again. Yeah, definitely. And I know you and I, that's why I love you so much. It's like we get to support each other in that way. Like we have very raw and real conversations about like the trauma in our bodies, and here's what I'm going through this week, and here's what I'm spinning out of control on. And we just like, we really hold space for each other and we don't judge. And that's like one way that we as sisters, as women, as people can help each other heal.
Yeah. And I want to add, trauma can be something invisible. Trauma is the big things like a serious family loss or some kind of horrific abuse that I wish for it to never happen again. But it can also be these little regular things that all of your friends go through, and I call it invisible because it's so normal. It's hard to pinpoint. There's a shame dynamic that happens when you speak up. And so because I believe that naturally as a human, we're all very attached to being good, being a good person. So when you express some kind of hurt to somebody, if that person was, okay, pretend Angelica and I got in a fight. If I express some kind of hurt that Angelica did to me, even and it's really common, she won't recognize it. And then she may get defensive because she is, like everybody else, very attached to being a good person. So acknowledging the hurt that she caused on somebody else conflicts with the identity that I'm a good person. So she is literally not capable of seeing it. And that can be a trauma.
That could perpetuate your trauma because I'm not able to hold space for your pain.
Yeah.
Because I'm stuck in my own little egoic cage.
And so
totally.
It's all, so when we're talking about trauma, it could be any of that. It could be the horrifying, it could be the regular, everyday, invisible. It could be any of it, but it still registers in your body as a stress response. And when it's over and over and over and over, that becomes a trauma response. And so as we are talking, we're not defining what kind of trauma you had or anybody had. We're talking about the internal response. Yes. Okay. So
important.
I just want to define that because I have talked about traumas with other people that actually went through war crimes or very serious stuff, and they got mad at me because who am I? I don't know anything about trauma. I'm just like a stupid blonde girl, and on one hand, they're right because what they went through was so horrifying, but it's also important for us to acknowledge our own internal experience and to not compare.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I couldn't agree more. It's not about the story or what happened. It's all about how your system responded to what happened. That's what trauma is. And you're correct in that it can be a repetitive process of not being seen or heard, maybe all of your life, because you were around people who just couldn't hold space for your feelings.
Yeah. Or different personality type. It's so interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's so important that we honor, I'm sorry that people gave you the reflection that your trauma wasn't as recognizable as theirs, or it wasn't worth its salt because it wasn't a big capital T trauma, so I'm sorry that happened.
Oh, it's okay. I was triggering them.
Right.
So it was their response and I didn't mean to trigger them.
Yeah.
So as I looked back at that particular interaction, they were interpreting me minimizing what they went through, even though that's not what I was doing.
Right.
But the intention doesn't matter when there's that kind of thing. It's the reception and the perception that has to be acknowledged. And so I felt bad for them, but I think it's important for people to acknowledge.
Yeah, but here we go. We're practicing it right now. I'm holding space for you had some trauma in your body and you got into an interaction where somebody else was not even really allowing of you to have trauma in your body. That can lead you to not feel seen and heard, and to maybe you wouldn't question yourself, but let's suppose Jessica with a little bit less of a healing background might be maybe I'm really just making a big deal out of this, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I don't have trauma in my body, oh my God, so just recognizing that that you deserve to be heard and seen for your experience too.
Too, that is the key word also. Beautiful. I think we covered all the questions I wrote. Oh, we didn't. I found more. Okay.
I'm having us such a good time.
I know.
So good.
So, okay, we're just going to take a little pause. Okay, so we're now continuing with part 2. And we were just talking about, we covered so much stuff. You'll have to just watch part 1. But what we were just talking about right at the end was how trauma registers in the body and the stress response, and how your physical gut health response can affect your emotions, but simultaneously your emotions can also affect your physical response. So it goes both ways, and we're meandered into the trauma response that happens in bodies. So Angelica is an amazing gut health coach, and we're going to continue. Okay, the next question: if you believe that you do have gut health issues, what are some specific questions that people should ask their doctor, healthcare professional, gut health coach, health coach? What are some specific questions that people could write down and ask whoever they're working with to get to more clear answers?
Awesome. I love it. Okay. I'm just going to keep it real that if you ask for a lot of the things I'm about to share, if you're on like a standard Western health insurance plan, your doctor probably is not working with these kind of evaluations, but I'm going to give them to you anyway. And again, see what your doctor, see how they receive it, see if they're open-minded and like look at you as an equal and take it in, and if they're able to serve you from there. So the first thing that everybody could be evaluating is there a sufficiency of your gut organs and your I call it your digestive juices, okay? So a really easy way to detect this is through a stool test. So yes, it's gonna involve you collecting your own stool. It's really eye-opening experience, but you essentially collect it, put it in a vial and send it to a lab, which can evaluate the chemistry and see if you are, creating adequate enzymes to break down your food. These come from our pancreas, okay? They can evaluate if you're creating enough bile, which breaks down fat and helps us detoxify so much and dump so much through our bowels. It can evaluate if you're having inflammation in your gut. It can evaluate markers that would indicate if you have a leaky gut, okay? So this is a really good like first step to addressing like a root cause of your digestive issues. Just see like if your organs are doing their job, okay? So once you address that, the next thing I would really look at is food sensitivities. Now, there's a lot of talk on the town about how those tests are a sham and how it's not really like that accurate. But honestly, in my own experience, when I found out and addressed the food sensitivities, it changed the game. I just really was not able to get any improvement or to make any progress in my gut healing regimens because I kept recreating inflammation in my gut by eating the wrong foods. So I urge people to address this next, because the next piece I'm going to talk about, it also will be impacted by you eating foods that are inflammatory for your body. Okay. So a lot of ways that I like to do this is through a blood test. You can ask for your doctor if you can evaluate yourself for gluten and wheat sensitivity. Look for wheat, not just gluten, because it's so common to have a disorder related to wheat, not just like gluten, which is like one protein found in the wheat. There are other parts of wheat that are also really inflammatory. So please, please, please ask for a wheat sensitivity evaluation. There's also a really great lab I love called Vibrant Wellness, and they have a Zoomer, which is a really amazing comprehensive wheat sensitivity panel. And they also have a ton of other food panels like eggs, nuts, dairy, all the things. So that's the second stop I would really urge people to go to after they've evaluated and covered like the gut functioning. Okay. Last step I think to evaluate is your balance of organisms. Again, this is going to be through a stool test. There are other indirect ways to measure what kind of organisms might be in your gut, but to keep it simple, a stool test will show you what is in your microbiome. If you have parasitic, fungal, like yeast and other types of fungi, or bacterial imbalance. So you get to evaluate that and you get to see what kind of, what's there so that you can then take actions to rebalance it and get your microbiome back in a really happy and healthy state that will help you digest food better, that'll potentially relieve you of a lot of the digestive discomfort you're already experiencing. So those are kind of the three main ways I think that your doctor could serve you.
Amazing. Okay, so let's say that a health practitioner or health coach is watching this and they found insight. What should they ask their patient?
Ooh, great question. Well, that's a tough one, because I think to have a really thorough analysis of a problem, like a body is not a problem, it's a very complex system, and I think it warrants like a really deep history, like a doctor to take a really deep history. And often, if anyone's been to a doctor in their health insurance network, you get like a few minutes with your doctor. Usually you see the medical assistant, they take all your vitals, you get a physician's assistant doing some stuff with you in the examination room. The doctor might come in for a few minutes, look at your chart, and that's all you get. But in fact, to really like examine the body on a functional level, like let's see what's happening in your digestive tract, like let's see what your blood tests are showing us. Let's see what some of these other tests are revealing to us about, what could be getting in your way of having energy. It takes like a thorough appointment, usually like talking to someone for an hour after they filled out forms, asking clarifying questions. That way you start to like piece together all of the things that are out of balance, and then you can start to discuss with your patient ways that they can start implementing changes. That's the other thing that like is really missing, is like the support going forward. Let's say you've identified your issues, you know what you need to work on. The implementation though is sometimes the trickiest part for people. Like, so let's say they know what they need to eat, but then like there's a lot of lifestyle factors getting in the way, a lot of competing priorities getting in the way of them implementing the diet that they know they need to follow to get well. So yeah, what should doctors ask? That's so hard. I think that they should be asking just so many more questions and being really curious about your patient's symptoms. I would say like recognizing that they're having these symptoms and getting really clear on how the symptoms are showing up, what improves them, how severe they are, how frequent they are. Really taking a really good history and giving time. That's what I think practitioners should focus on, and not dismissing.
Beautiful. So what is it like to work with you?
Oh, well, I mean, not to brag or anything, but it's supposed to feel like a massive coming home to your body and a massive empowerment, and also like a massive therapy session where like you get to experience someone really hearing you for the first time. If you imagine all of your life, most of us have been going to doctors, we get a few minutes here and there, and we feel just sort of pushed aside by the people that are supposed to be taking care of our health and well-being. They're responsible for our health and well-being. So you're going to get somebody who is going to listen and not rush you. And I'm going to probably ask you way more questions than you ever were comfortable answering about your body and your bowel movements. And we're going to do that. And then you're going to get to see for yourself, like, look at all of these pieces that I wasn't even like connecting earlier. And then we're going to then look at functionally, okay, what systems in the body might be out of balance. I'm going to help you understand how to interpret your blood tests so that, if you are told you're healthy, but you're not feeling good, I'm going to show you how to look at them in a different way and show you, here's how we spot the trends or the patterns where the blood markers are going in the wrong direction, like detecting problems early on. I'm going to teach you how to do that. The idea is that you're going to walk away feeling just so empowered, and like you can advocate for yourself when you do go to your doctor and be like, hey, here's what I identify as an issue. Here's what I see as a pattern. I don't want to keep going. What can we do for that? What can you do for me? And having that conversation. So that's how it would feel to work with me initially. Ongoing, I can help you to make all kinds of amazing, deep emotional and lifestyle changes so that you can support your healing protocol. But, just to get going with what I'm offering right now is a gut health action plan. This is like a standalone deep dive appointment where we're going to get to just like get deep into your history, deep into your symptoms. Again, we're going to do that listening, and we're going to see what might be going on so that you can go forward and you can decide what you want to do next. If you'd like to work with someone long-term, coaching and really implementing, or if you want to go with your doctor. So that's how it would feel to work with me right now.
And one more question. What are the benefits or the pros of working with a health coach versus a doctor? I feel like we already went into that, but because I think a health coach is probably quite new to a lot of people, so I want to give more thinking points. So what are the benefits of choosing to work with a health coach or a doctor, or ideally should it be both?
Such a good question. I really think that it should be both. I would hope that everybody who is experiencing chronic health challenges or not has a team of different professionals to support them. We really all need so much support in a challenging environment where there's just so many assaults on our body. So I would say in an ideal world, I would love for a client to have a great, compassionate, open-minded doctor that they're working with that can prescribe them pharmaceuticals if they need them, that will be able to order testing under their insurance plan. That's useful, right? And then a health coach, what I like to bring as a coach is I like to bring more insight and education and interpretation into your experience. Like a doctor may not have all that time to explain to you what the blood markers mean and to kind of educate you a little bit more in like your physiology in a way. I like to bring that piece so that when you go to your doctor, you have 10 minutes, you know the right questions to ask, like you know exactly what you want, and it's very focused. Also the implementation. So I've worked with really great, like acclaimed naturopathic doctors. I've worked with nutritionists. I've worked with a lot of the gamut of professionals in the natural health space. Yet I found that I always felt like I needed more support in the implementation, in adjusting my protocol when things didn't quite feel right. And also to get like that moral support that like just to keep going and to keep persisting, because it can be a long journey. Healing is a circular journey. It is rarely linear. Okay. And so like for me, my journey has been 4 years now since I started to really address my issues. And I can say that I just wish I had someone with me along the way, like to be there for me when I was like crying and defeated and like nothing's working, or when I'm like, I'm having such a hard time missing the foods that I'm giving up because I know it'll support my body and my healing to give them up. I wish I had somebody there to like really just hold my hand and to keep cheering me on and to help me keep adapting to the protocol in a good way.
Yeah. Making big changes to how you eat can be very socially isolating, and that can be hard, and it's a deterrent for a lot of people.
Oh my gosh, yes, it is. You're spot on. It's one of the biggest blocks that my clients experience is, how do I support my body and implement all these suggestions you're making for me without being like that standout person that has to like bring their own dish to a party because they are not able to have everything that's on offer. So yeah, such a big one. And I'm so glad you brought that up.
And I know that you cook really well, so you can also share amazing recipes.
Yeah, I'm a professionally trained chef. Like in my first career, I did get a degree in nutrition science. However, I didn't want to work in a clinical setting. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be a chef. I loved cooking. I come from a family that loves cooking. And so that was a natural path for me. And it's funny because I got like classical training in French culinary school. And I was like, this is so not me. This is so just like old fashioned. And it was literally just like centuries old French cuisine. And I'm like, no. But then I also studied in Thailand. I studied Southeast Asian cooking intensively. So I've traveled the world a lot. So I have a lot of exposure and like different ways to implement healthy cooking in a way that's like sustainable, delicious, fulfilling. So yeah, I love to bring that in. It's fun to like bring that in and to support my clients that way. Definitely.
Because eating really healthy can still be delicious.
It's the best. Like I always say, like, I don't know about you, but like I'm not that interested. I used to be a foodie. Like I used to be a foodie before my health when you know got challenging. I was just like eating all the food and going to all like the new restaurants, and that was exciting to me. That brought me a lot of pleasure. But now I'm like, oh my God, nothing is like cooler to me than eating like a really good, like earthy carrot that I got from the farmer's market, or like eating like an incredible ripe, like seasonal persimmon that's just like biting into a ball of pudding. Like there's nothing better to me. Like, I'm like, I don't care, like, you know, if it's the best chef in the world, the best restaurant in the world, like there is something just classic about like a really incredible raw ingredient.
Yeah, it is. It can be amazing and joyful. And yeah.
Yes.
I love that. Okay. So if someone wants to work with you, how can they contact you?
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to get to connect with everyone who's watching this video. And I love to be social. So on Instagram, that's where I hang out the most. It's at Angelica C. Martin. So spell it Angel ICA C Martin. From there, I have a link on my profile where you can find out about all I'm doing, how to work with me in like a deep dive session, or if you'd like, I have a free guide that I really want to share. If you find this talk interesting and like you want to start to get some basics in place and just like DIY it, I have a free guide. It's downloadable and you can find it on my Instagram profile. And it's a way to like address the digestion at the root cause, like start to optimize it so that you can heal like any more complicated issues that may arise. But it's so important to get those foundations in place. So I offer that for free, and I'd love for everyone to check that
How amazing to get a free resource like that. Okay, Instagram. And then are you on Linktree as well?
Oh yeah, I do have a link tree. It's a little hard because of that URL. Linktree does something funny, so we can post it in the video description. Okay. Yeah, it's funny how they write that out. But yeah, if you go to my Instagram profile though, like you can find my Linktree, and that's like that's basically my homepage where all the stuff I'm doing, my free download, coaching options, it's all there.
Oh, amazing! Great. Thank you so much, Angelica. And
thank you.
Thank you everyone for sharing and moving in the direction of your highest version.
Yes, it's such a good way to close. Thank you.
Thank you.